Welcome to the Long Thread podcast about spinning, stitching, and weaving by hand. The podcast is presented by Long Thread Media, publishers of Spin-Off, Hand Woven, Piecework, and Little Looms magazines. Find us online at longthreadmedia.com. I'm your host, Long Thread Media co-founder Ann Merrow. Dave Van Stralen is the operations manager for Louët, an icon in the spinning and weaving world, celebrating 50 years. He joined the company 30 years ago alongside his parents, Jan and Trudy. Today he works for Louët's owner, Theo Vervoorn, who is the son of one of the company's founding partners. So, Dave, thanks for being with me.
Happy to be here.
So, Louët is having a 50th birthday.
Yes, Louët is 50 years old and proud of it. Longevity is really something when you think back what that really means. You know, the things that have happened in 50 years around the world and for the company itself, and changes in the industry and the adaptation that you have to make to stick with it. Mm-hmm. It's quite amazing, actually, and the company is very proud of itself for that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was thinking that Louët looks like a different company depending on where you approach it from. So something simple like if you look at this website in Europe, there's an umlaut over the E, and in North America, there's no umlaut. But if you're a spinner, you think of an iconic, at least when I was starting, you think of the iconic S10 with a solid wheel. But if you're a weaver, you probably think of one of the range of different looms from simple to complicated. So can you tell me a little bit, when you think about Louët, what do you think of?
Well, for me, Louët is quality, innovation. Those are the cornerstones of what Louët was built upon from 1974 onwards. And attention to detail has always been very important. I was always amazed. You know, I was a distributor for Louët for 30 some years. And I was always amazed at, you know, when a new product comes out, the details mm-hmm. of everything from the instruction manual to the packaging, how well things were packaged. It was always well thought out, and that was clear. And that's interesting now where I've evolved to being part of that side of it as well. As you mentioned, the iconic S10, mm-hmm. and I, when I think of Louët, that's an image that comes to mind. That is, in my mind, the image of Louët. Mm-hmm. This year, when we were talking about different promotional marketing kinds of things, I right away said we need to bring back the earrings, the S10 earrings. And yes, even if you're a weaver, I guess if you're new to Louët in the last, let's call it 5 years or so, then maybe that doesn't have the same symbolism. But anybody who knows Louët from more than 10 years ago, I think that symbolism is very strong for our brand. As far as the umlaut, I basically will get in trouble for whenever that's recognized as not being in place. It should be on on the website. In all honesty, we've been neglecting the North American, the .com site for the last little while, as we've been really transitioning to only using the .nl site, and we'll actually be mirroring that site to the .com site over the course of the next few months. There was a lot of technical stuff in the background that didn't allow us to get that done as quickly as we'd like. But the umlaut should be there, definitely.
Yeah. Well, and that reminds me of, there's a relationship that Louët has always had with its dealers. I remember a while ago, it was really novel that you could reach through and purchase something from a distributor, so that there was that sort of connection. You wanted people to know the Louët quality, but also sort of seek out and have a relationship with the people who were going to help you with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, Louët believes strongly in working with dealers mm-hmm. and having as much as possible a more local connection. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're an ocean away from the North American market and time zones and those kinds of things and holiday structures. Quite often, there's a lot of holidays in Holland. And I think that there's such a tangible aspect to spinning and weaving, and having somebody who can physically help is a real plus. Now, having said that, we're in the buy online mm-hmm. era and the internet era, and there's also just not a dealer everywhere, mm-hmm. and that's a fact. And unfortunately, that's a reality. So, we have to try to accommodate both avenues. But as far as the preference, absolutely, we want to try to support dealers. Interesting fact: just January 2024, we stopped selling direct to consumer in Europe. The Dutch site always sold direct to consumer, and they felt that there was a need for that. It was a bit of my influence to stop that and let us focus just on production and distribution and marketing and things like that, and pushing back to the dealers. And as I've been visiting dealers in Europe, they have been very appreciative. And so I think trying to just continue to strengthen relationships with dealers is very important to Louët. Paul, the owner of Louët, was just in Japan on vacation, and he stopped in to see a dealer as well as several other spinning weaving stores just to introduce himself, introduce the product line. So we definitely want to do that. And getting to Japan isn't the easiest and the most cost-effective option. So when the opportunity presents itself, we need to seize it for sure.
Yeah. Because not only do you want to try something out or speak to an expert when you're buying something, but then, if you have something and you're wondering, how do I tweak this, or I lost a part, it's really important to have the support for that.
Yes, but that's where I find that there is a bit of a challenge in that people want information now, and even the dealer isn't always available. And we've built up a system through Zendesk, an online support platform, to try to help bridge that gap. We've got hundreds of articles explaining various things that could go wrong, could wear out, could cause questions from every product that we offer. This was a little COVID project for me, actually, using that time wisely, building up that database. So, but now those articles, we're seeing hundreds and hundreds of articles being accessed every week, to the tune of 700 articles a week being accessed. We're getting 30, 40 tickets opened a day asking support questions. And there's also dealers now have access to that information. And every dealer doesn't know everything about every product, but they would like to support their customers. So if they can look up the information and get a quicker answer to the customer, it's utilized by both sides of that equation. And we've found it an extremely, extremely useful tool for dealers and consumers alike. And we're only going to build on that.
I was talking to someone recently who had a great find. She's just thinking about dipping her toe in, and she found an S77, I believe, spinning wheel. And I said, well, you can reach out to Louët, and I'm sure they can help you figure out what's missing or what needs to be tuned up. So there's a huge number of pieces of equipment that you need to sort of have in mind and have in your archives.
Yeah, definitely. There's in Europe, there's a law that you're supposed to support products for at least 10 years after they're discontinued.
Oh, wow.
We're supporting products 30, 40 years after they're discontinued. I think there's the Hollandia, we're running out of certain things. The Combo, we're running out of certain things. Those were products from the 80s. There's a drum carder from the 70s that we can't fix. Those kinds of things. But most products were definitely keeping that longevity. Interesting fact about the S77, that's the wheel we've chosen to celebrate our 50th anniversary as a limited edition product.
Oh, wow.
That's being made as we speak, and we'll be doing some marketing, bringing that to the market over the next few months here. But we're doing a limited edition series of 100 units. We'll sell worldwide. It'll also have the skein winder attachment to it.
Nice.
So it's a real complete product for sure.
Yeah. Is it hard to keep supporting all of those legacy, well-designed, but maybe not current pieces, and also develop new projects?
Two-part question here. Is it difficult to support older product lines? The biggest challenge I find is having the in-house knowledge of the products. And that's why we're really trying to document as much information as we can, because, with young Louët retiring a couple of years ago now, I've got the most product knowledge of Louët products of somebody who's working for Louët now. And that's 30 years. There's a gentleman that works at the factory. He's been working there for 42 years. So he has a certain level, but he's working on assembly and production. So he has a different, knowledge set than myself. But between the two of us, we're able to manage. Usually what I can't figure it out is say, hey, Johan, you remember this? And it's usually yes. And then we sort it out and figure it out. But, that will be a challenge ongoing, right? If at some point I'm going to retire as well. And one of the things that I'm really focused on is more documentation, more video documentation of product lines, and imparting that knowledge onto customers. One of the ladies that works at the factory, she's an assembly floor supervisor, Wanda, she is constantly asking me questions about how's this work? What's that for? Mm-hmm. And, she's been building, she builds all the Magatos, all the spring looms, all the Delta looms, all the Octado looms, and she knows how to put them all together, but she doesn't weave. Oh. And so she doesn't know really how everything is related. So that's a big learning curve. And recently, I'm talking the last year, we taught Nadine, who's one of our sales staff, to weave. And that's the first person in the Louët factory who weaves.
Wow.
So that's a big plus. And she approached it a little reluctantly. And she said, well, I don't, it's not my passion, but now I know, mm-hmm. and I understand how to answer questions. And see, that's a big, important piece. Mm-hmm. And so, we're going to continue to try to grow the knowledge, internal knowledge. One of our plans is to have dealer training days mm-hmm. Starting next year. And some of the staff will be taking part in that for the same reason, just mm-hmm. to learn more. And I mean, Paul has a lot of knowledge of all the products as well. He's been around the factory since he was, a young lad. He grew up all around it. So he has that kind of osmosis learning that I went through with my parents as well. So Paul is there as well. But a day-to-day kind of a customer service kind of level, it's important to continue to impart that knowledge and document. And I think video documentation is really important. Mm-hmm. The other part of your question regarding product development, mm-hmm. I find it's so critical to stay in touch with the market, mm-hmm. Keep listening to your dealers, your customers, because spinning and weaving is not my passion. Therefore, I'm not experiencing new product ideas or new things through crafting myself, mm-hmm. right? So I'm relying on how often do I hear something from a dealer? Is this a viable product line that we could develop? Mm-hmm. And then start going from there. And then it's kind of a development phase and then testing phase. And we rely heavily on dealers and consumers who we've talked to and for testing and fine tuning a product before we bring it to market. Mm-hmm. But Paul is really driven and motivated by product development. That's something he really enjoys and gets really fired up. It's funny because Paul was at Convergence over the summer. And when he got back, he was so wired because of the things he's seen around the show floor. Wow, that could be different. We could do this different. We could do this. And what about that? And there's just, really, really motivated, really fired up. And that was fun to see that in him as well. And so we've got lots of things on the go. It's I made a list when I first got to Holland 2 years ago and said, this is kind of the product development list that I think we should go towards. And the list is just growing. We're working on a couple of new products right now, and we're not talking about them until we get them to the point, to a certain point, right? And then we can talk about them and get samples to people to test and things like that. So yeah, it's a bit of a learning curve because Paul just bought the company 2 years ago now. So some of the things that were intuitive for Jan and his partner, Paul's father, are things that he and I are mm-hmm. Working through and saying, oh yeah, we shouldn't do it quite like that, mm-hmm. or we should do this. But that's a lot of fun as well, right? And we're definitely in a growth phase. Paul wants to grow the company and increase our product lines and try to be a more complete supplier for the market and for years to come. That's the other thing is the longevity. We're aiming to find a way to get ourselves to 100 years. Yeah. What do we need to do to get there? Right. Is kind of a bit of the thought process.
I think that can be a really interesting partnership. You might think, oh, well, of course, the person to design these things should be the person who is most passionate about it. But sometimes it takes somebody who has a little bit different perspective, who can say, well, what if we tried it this way? And I think that's often why there's this sort of partnership between the person who is passionate about the craft or the people who are passionate about the craft and the people who have more of whether it's an engineering background or an operations background. And I wonder, is that something that you see in your own family? Because, of course, the name Van Stralen, when I first started in the craft, the folks I knew were your parents.
Yeah, my mother was the craft person, the passionate spinner, weaver, dyer, and my father was an engineer. It's funny, our story with Louët, the way that started is that we moved to a farm to get back to the earth and grow our own vegetables. And I should say we, because I was like a wee little lad back then. I think when we moved to the farm, I was 5. I wasn't part of that decision-making process, but that's their reasons why they wanted to move to a farm. And then, well, okay, we have a farm. We need sheep, we need goats, we need a cow, we need some pigs, we need some chickens. And then all of a sudden we have these sheep and there's wool coming off them. And it's like, here, Trudy, my father said to my mother, here's this wool, do something with it. Right. And so then she started figuring things out. Well, I need a spinning wheel. And so my dad had to go to the market and analyze all the various spinning wheels in the market. And he felt that the Louët wheel was the best engineered spinning wheel. So we started selling Louët spinning wheels. And by 1980, she was selling more spinning wheels for Louët than anyone in North America. Mm. So then Jan Louët and his partner at the time, Clemens, Claessen, were going to come to North America for convergence. And they said, well, if we're coming to North America, we have to visit this Dutch lady. So there was a language connection there because my parents immigrated from Holland in 67. And that's how the relationship started. We still have what we feel is a relatively iconic photo with Jan Louët and Clemens Claessen standing beside their great big North American Chrysler, boat of a car in our driveway. And they have this, like I say, Louët has this picture in their repertoire of historical pictures. So I think it was a moment for them as well. And that's how our relationship started. And from there, yeah, we definitely, in 89, my mom started distributing for Louët, and then I joined in 94. But from that moment on, we had meetings with Louët for, 2-3 days at a time, once a year. 1 year we'd go to Holland, 1 year they'd come to us, and we would sit and talk about the market and what's missing, what can we do differently. And it was, a good day and a half of our conversations was focused on those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. My mother is the person who, basically said we need something like Victoria, and Victoria came along. The S90 was a product of my mother's prodding and pushing. So there's different products like that that she's definitely had an influence on. But to your point, it's the combination of a person who is using the products in the craft and has passion for the craft and is finding there's a hole in the market or a hole in our product assortment, mm-hmm. To fill needs in the market. And then an engineer on the other side. I always describe myself, yes, I can spin and I can weave, but I'm not a spinner nor a weaver in that same line. So, I look at my kind of role in the product development is more bringing ideas forward that I think that the market is asking for or could fit in our product assortment. Mm-hmm. And from there, Paul takes it and starts developing. And it's just a back and forth. Does this look right? Does that look right? And then once we get there, then a weaving loom, for example, because we have a new weaving loom coming, mm-hmm. I can put it through its first paces and say, yeah, this is working. Now let's fine tune it by sending it to weavers and say, what do you think? Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how we go about that at this point.
So is that something you're ready to tell me about?
That was the only snippet. The problem is if I say too much, everybody gets so excited, and then the questions just start coming right, left, and center, and we're just not ready for them. Right. We don't have the answers. Mm-hmm. When is it going to be available? What's the price going to be? Right. What are the weaving widths? What are the mm-hmm. all those kinds of things, and we just don't have those mm-hmm. details yet. So it opens up a can of worms. So just the fact that yes, we are working on something mm-hmm. is about all I really dare to say.
Well, I don't know many people who don't feel that they're weavers who have a loom named after them. There is a David loom, and I guess that's you, right?
No, actually not.
Oh my gosh, how embarrassing.
No. It's a very, very common thought. I mean, who would have guessed that it wasn't named after me? I've been around almost as long as the David loom, but David is named after David and Goliath. Oh. Small but mighty. That is the origin of the name of the David loom. So, yeah.
That actually makes me, this is just sort of a question for my own curiosity. There's a couple of different naming schemes that go on. There's the series that all have letters and numbers. And I don't know how you remember which are which, but then it seems like some of them have more, so David and Goliath, David is an older name. So it's not just you used to do the numbers and now you do the names. How does this all work?
Well, weaving looms seem to have received a name from the get-go. Mm-hmm. The Hollandia was the first weaving loom, and the country of origin is the origin of that name. The spring loom came along later on. Actually, the combo was the first one. So the combo reason for that is because we made it as a rigid heddle loom that could be converted to a harness loom. So the combination. The spring loom, because it was the springs used in the floating breast beam system that we patented. That was the source of that name. And David, as I just explained. The spinning wheels, that started from day one as an S series for spinning.
Yeah.
And then, a number, I don't have an explanation of where the number sequence came from, but that S series just stuck with things. And it wasn't until we introduced Victoria that we gave it an S number. It's the S95, as well as a name. And that came because Victoria was Jan Louët's first grandchild.
Oh.
He wanted, it all came at the exact same time. And he said, yeah, we're going to call this Victoria. So
it's a little spinning wheel for a little girl.
Yeah.
So what are the things that you can talk about? What are the things that you are excited that are new offerings?
Well, we've introduced our new Inkle loom that's on the market and known. We've announced that we're going to be discontinuing the Magic loom and the Octado, and so there will be replacements for those coming. Yeah, the e-spinner, I think everybody knows about that at this point as well. But I think the biggest thing I could say is we are very keen on developing new products, and there's going to be some very interesting developments, not only with new products that we develop, but we're going to grow as a company, and we're looking at various ways of doing that.
Okay.
So there's some really interesting things that are coming for Louët. I think people should know that we are developing. We're looking to grow. We're looking to find new product lines for customers, and we're listening to customers. You know, a good example is with our Jane loom has a built-in rattle. And when you're warping, the edges of the toggle hinges, they wrapped around the top shelf of the Jane. When you're warping, the yarns would sometimes get caught in between those plastic hinges. And this, one of our dealer visits, we talked to a dealer. They're explaining this to us, and can you do something about that? So we get back and look at, if we just made that shelf a little bit thicker and made a groove in there and put that little plastic edge inside the groove, problem solved. So we've done that now and adapted the product and made a modification that'll improve for the product for everyone in the future. So it's product development in that respect as well. And then we're looking at our existing products. Things that I have talked about already is the David loom. At this point, are one of our most popular looms. We're going to increase it to 12 harnesses, and we're going to make a dobby system for it. So, and the intention, the goal is to make that dobby system backwards compatible with all the other David looms. So there's a David 1, a David 2, and a David 3. And so even though the new David will be 12 harnesses, that dobby box, you can connect it to your 8 harness David, and there'll be an electric lift system involved with that as well. There's a bunch of development that still needs to happen, but we're looking at 2025 for that product, probably later in the year. That's all the details we have. We're not going to tell anymore, but it's something I have already mentioned in different areas, so it's not letting a cat out of the bag. And that's a significant one, actually. One of the motivations is that people who are doing baby wraps, feedback came to us that, your looms are great, but we really need 10 shafts to add the tabby on the sides. And I said, oh, wow. Then we started talking. Do we change the David to a 10 shaft loom? I said, well, then why don't we just go to 12? And I kept saying, and a dobby and a dobby and a dobby. Because one of the reasons why we developed the Octado loom is to make a lower shaft number in a dobby system so that people don't have to crawl on the floor to do their tie-ups, right? Simplifying that for people as they're aging. And our market is always kind of that 50 to 70 year old. That's the majority of our market. It kind of shifts as we go.
People turn 50 every year.
That was the original idea of the Octado. The problem that we had with the Octado is the price point was just too high.
Mm-hmm.
It was higher than the spring loom, which gives you more features than the David loom. So we needed to find a way to get that price point back into a more reasonable position. And our plan with the David loom will be to have the dobby and the e-lift system as an accessory, which you don't have to buy at the time you buy the loom. You'll have the treadles to operate, and then I'm going to use 5 years as an example down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's get this e-lift system and this dobby system now. So it lets you grow into it and divide those costs over a bit of time as well, instead of having to make a huge purchase all in one. So we're hoping that will be a good fit in the market as we go along.
Mm-hmm. I think of that sort of modular nature. I keep coming back to spinning because that's how I came into this. But I think of that modular nature with regard to the S10 concept wheel too. That you can start off with a Irish tension and switch to a Scotch tension. You can choose whether you want the sort of iconic solid or nearly solid wheel, or whether you want something that looks a little bit more traditional with the sort of spokes.
The spokes, and that was another one of my mother's ideas. I think influenced in that direction. The problem that we had is that we didn't really explain it to the market well, I think. It met with a fair amount of resistance. Dealers didn't quite understand how that would work, and how can the customer wants a spinning wheel. Okay, what do I order now? And so, we didn't do a very good job in explaining that. But the concept is still there. All the components are still there, and we're packaging it a little differently now. But indeed, and this is something I say to dealers all the time, start with a single treadle, the old traditional S10 single treadle. And then, birthday comes along next year, you can get a double treadle for it for a couple $100 more. Rather than spending $1,000 off the hop, you can get into it for $600 or whatever the numbers are right now. The point is, being modular, letting you learn on the S10, because that's something I've heard from dealers for many, many years. The S10 is an easy, the Irish tension is an easy system to learn how to spin. And then when you want to get into finer yarn, there's better tension control with Scotch tension. Well, then you can add the Scotch tension to it. And so it lets you actually buy one wheel and then adapt it to all the various types of spinning that you want to do over the course of your spinning career. And so that modular effect, I think, fits the market as well. It's more, we need to do a better job of educating. I think we've gotten a little closer there anyway with the way our website is lined up now. You can pick and choose the different pieces, and then they kind of get all pieced together on the website, and you see what your wheel looks like in the end. Yeah. You can click radial buttons between Scotch and Irish, or which wheel type, or flyer with hooks or flyer with a slider, etc. So it really lets you build the wheel that you want. If the budget is not what's holding you back, then you can go right for the fully loaded, which gets you a bag and all the various options and accessories all in one shot. So that's always an option as well.
Yeah. One of the sort of signature elements of Louët equipment, I think, is that we often think of spinning and weaving equipment as being very sort of traditional looking, that you use very old-fashioned materials. And that's always been one way that Louët's a little bit different. There's sort of a laminated wood. From an aesthetic perspective, maybe something that's more angular or not turned, but there's always been a sort of a slightly different touch and feel to it.
Yeah, it's a style that we embraced from the beginning and maintain in what we're producing. The wood look and feel and clean lines, well finished, well lacquered. Those are all signature pieces to a Louët piece of equipment. And that's something we're always actually talking about in development, in decisions for products, and or maybe changes to products. That's really a signature piece for Louët. But it's also, something we've heard many, many times is the product looks so good, it can sit in my living room and I don't feel it's out of place. It's not an ugly thing that's sitting in my living room or in my main part of my house, the spinning wheel, weaving loom. They're happy to have it sitting out and visible to, guests. And that's not necessarily the same comment that you get with other brands of product, but that is definitely, clean lines, light colored wood. In the beech that we use, or the ash that we use, all signatures definitely of Louët.
Yeah. Although sometimes I see them painted, which is kind of fun too.
Well, we did that with the S17. We did a whole thing a bunch of years back, paint the main wheel and send us pictures. And we actually have an idea to introduce a whole series of colored S17s. And so you can choose which color you want. You get a little can of paint in the box. It's yeah, seriously, that's something we've been knocking around all year actually as something we want to do. It's actually been a bit of a supply problem why it hasn't been introduced yet. So I'm sure we'll do it still at some point. And speaking of the S17, the S17 double treadle is new this year. That's an addition that just trying to get, double treadles are just more popular. So trying to get something on that lower price point side that is double treadle.
So how is that different from the S10 wheels?
Well, actually, it's really in the finish. For the most part, it's all the same. Well, no, it's all laminated wood used in the S17. So a little priced from the wood perspective, but the fact that we haven't lacquered the wood at all, the lacquering process is very expensive for us. And so that brings the price point of the wheel down. But as far as, it has the same number of bearings, it has all the same hardware, literally identical to the S10. So you're you're really getting the same wheel. But visually, aesthetically, you get to put your own twist to it.
Yeah, it's like a canvas.
You need to finish it in one way or another, otherwise the wood's going to decay over time. So you want to oil it or lacquer it or stain it or paint it or whatever. And some customers really enjoy that because they have a creative side. That's why they're doing spinning and weaving. And so putting their stamp on it is a nice way for them to put a personal touch to make their wheel, make it their own.
So if you can think about other ways in which, so when I think about the Louët spinning wheels, there are certain features that are a thread that runs through. I don't know as much about the looms. Is there something that you would say is kind of a thread that runs through them? They all tend to have the Texsolve heddles at this point. That's very surfacey.
Yeah, Texsolve heddles. All the table looms are using elastics to pull shafts back down. That's a common thread. The rattle is a common thread through all the looms, being on top of the castle and used for back to front warping. And it's something that quite a few customers who say, well, I never use that. They prefer front to back, or they sectional warp or whatever that might be. There's a lot of sectional warping I find coming back. That's as an aside, a lot more interest in that. And but common themes, I think it's more kind of just the look and the shape is for a weaving loom is just similar from one to another. I often get people sending me emails and tickets in our support system saying, "Can you identify this loom wheel?" Right, and it's really simple to see. No, that's not a Louët, and it's really the shape and than anything else. Most of our looms have the name printed on the front. Texsolve system, I think, is a huge one as far as differentiating. No metal heddles. Our shaft bars don't accommodate metal heddles, and it would add a lot of weight and change the whole balance of how they would work. So that's a distinct difference, I think, from other looms.
So you mentioned that you're kind of the person who has the most hands-on knowledge of, all of these different looms and wheels. And that's something that you really worked on for years, right? I mean, I used to see people would bring you their, "Hi, Dave, here's my wheel, fix my wheel." And it's something that you did kind of all across North America.
Yes. I mean, I would go to Soares years ago and set up a booth there. And all I did the whole show is people would just bring a wheel to me and I'd tune it up. And when we're traveling across North America with the mobile showroom, we did the same kind of thing. Dealers would advertise, "Louët's coming. If you want to bring your wheel, or in some cases your loom, Dave's there. He can tune it up." And that, when you sit and start fixing things, you definitely get to know products thoroughly. So I learned and I built that knowledge, and I actually enjoy it quite a bit as well. It's a fun interaction with people, and you see a lot of different models. And I'm doing a bit of that over here in Europe at this point as well. I've been to a few different loom homes, and one interesting one is I had to disassemble a loom, and then 8 months later I had to go and move it to a new location in the home. No, and I've done that kind of thing too in delivering looms and reassembling. It's twofold, really. It's the interaction with people, and it's imparting the knowledge that I have and growing my knowledge of the product. So it's definitely been built up over time, and it started really out of a need because as I joined the company in '94. Somebody needed to do customer support, and my mom was busy with dyeing and product development in our knitting lines. My dad still worked 9 to 5 as an engineer, so he wasn't there all the time. So I had to delve into that side of things, and I didn't find it too difficult either. So it's definitely been an ongoing learning process over the years, and not many looms or wheels that I can't figure out what's wrong. I haven't been stumped very often, let me put it that way.
Well, customer service has totally changed in the last 30 years from what people expect, how long they're willing to wait, what degree they're willing to work on things themselves. How have you seen that change? You mentioned the Zendesk element of it.
Yeah, the biggest change I find is people are expecting video in everything. And the bit of the challenge is even on products that are long discontinued. Some of those things get a little bit challenging, but I've been trying to do as much as I can with video to help support. And that seems to answer questions a lot quicker, and people find their solutions a lot quicker that way. So I would say that's, in my opinion, one of the biggest changes. Expectations of quick turnaround and answering questions has grown. But I do get a lot of people, because we try to answer within 12 to 24 hours.
Wow.
And I get a lot of people saying, wow, you answered so quickly. And I get in trouble from my wife when I'm sitting here on the couch on Saturday or Sunday evening, and I'm sitting here answering questions. But at the back of my mind, I look at it as spinners and weavers are doing their craft in their downtime. Well, that's weekends and evenings. So if I'm not busy doing something for myself, then I'm going to open my iPad and see if there's any questions, and I'll answer them. So that's helped with that kind of thing. But I like measuring and seeing what our progress is, and I'm pretty happy with the fact that we get generally about a 98 to 98.5% approval rating as far as our customer support. We send a little question mark, how is support? And, thumbs up, thumbs down, and 98.5% are coming up with a thumbs up. So I'm feeling that gives us a good indication that we're doing a pretty good job in that regard.
Yeah.
So it's really, for me, the support is important. I look at our business, innovation, quality, and support is 3 really huge legs that we're standing on, and I feel support has to continue to stay high, and we're constantly working hard to make sure that that stays that way.
So far cry from the days when people would write about their issue in a letter and mail it off and get a letter back.
Yeah, I haven't had a letter in a lot of years, but as many as 3-4 years ago, yes, I still got one. So how things changed back in 1998, I think it was, where our warehouse and office was in Ontario. We had an ice storm, and it absolutely shut down, destroyed power lines. We were without power for 10 days.
Wow.
But we received orders from dealers by fax, and most orders came in by fax. And so our fax machine was down. Nobody could reach us, and nobody else in North America knew what was going on. Why can't we reach them? And so we ended up, Pam, my wife, her father and mother lived in British Columbia, unaffected by this whole ice situation. They put a generator on an airplane and got it to us, and then that got our fax machine and one computer up and running. So we could communicate again. Wow. We've come a long way from since then, for sure. Another interesting tidbit is Louët.com. Back in the 90s, I bought Louët.com, and before I did so, I asked young Louët and Theo if they cared. Can I buy this? Is that a problem for you? No, we don't. What's the internet? And so I just bought that, and then a bunch of years later, it's like, hey, we should have Louët.com. Why do you have that? So, well, I asked you. So, but we changed that around over the last few years. It's interesting how things develop. So,
and now not only are computers taking orders, but computers are actually making your equipment now.
Oh yeah. We've got some pretty sophisticated CNC machines, and we're about to buy another one that will increase efficiency further. But yeah, I mean the software CAD programs to make all the drawings. We've still got a few of the products that were hand drawn by years ago, but most have now been converted. And now we're going to go through another conversion process as we're starting to use 3D drawing, and we're going to convert all of our drawings to 3D drawings, which allows you to really, it's really cool from the design standpoint, from the product development standpoint. We're literally putting a product completely together in a computer, like inside a drawing, so you can really take it apart and see how the different pieces are turning or moving together. Will this work? In theory, yes, this works. Okay, so now let's make one. And, this has to tinker a little bit here, a little bit there. But it's so much quicker than every idea that you have. You got to go and make a piece of wood and fit it together. Nope, that didn't work at all. All right, next try, right? So it really changes the whole product development process. And then the next step is being able to take those drawings and send them directly to the CNC machine, and it can pick up, knowing what drill bits to use, spacings, everything, how many pieces you can fit on one get cut out of one sheet of plywood or whatever. All those things can be programmed in the office and really simplify and create efficiency, and I'll be honest, there's a lot of efficiency that we can still get out of our machinery that we haven't really utilized. And that's something where Paul comes in as well. As he's really good at that kind of thing. And he's very involved in not only sourcing new machines, but then implementing them and then refining production processes to make the production process more efficient. And, when I first got to Holland, I was involved in setting up a new computer system to manage the whole manufacturing process. And we're looking at, a single product has 20 different steps that it has to run through in the factory before coming from a piece of wood to an end product. And so I said to one guy, I said, well, the next step will be to reduce that from 20 to 17, because then we've generated some efficiency. And then I'll be asking, how do we make it 15? And that's how you really work on efficiency. What steps can we eliminate? How can we eliminate them without adding more cost and time? We have a lot of labor in our processes, and that's something we're analyzing heavily over the last year. How can we streamline this, and how can we reduce the labor portion? Because labor is our huge, the biggest cost factor for Louët. And that's by far the case. So we're not trying to lay people off or something like that. We're trying to produce more with the same number of people and grow in that way. Yeah, using machinery and to our advantage, using technology to our advantage, we're constantly looking at that. How can we do things differently and use technology? So.
Now, not everybody knows what a CNC machine is, and I can't remember what the N and the C are for, but can you explain it?
I can't either, actually, but it's just a computer-assisted machine that has drill bits, saw blades, all the various tool bits that are used to manufacture. So you've got a solid piece of wood with no holes in it, and it needs a bunch of different holes in different positions, or a little bit of a section routed out to change the shape. Those are all things that they're automatically programmed into the machine. And then you've got a head that goes and gets the different tools that it needs each time and does various operations, and then switches tools again. And you've got multiple positions. So we've got like 16 different pieces of wood. Think about a back post of the S10, for example. So we've got 16 different back posts set on the CNC that they've already been cut to the right shape. And now it needs, at the top of the back post, there's a little piece that's routed out for the connection point with the mother of all. At the bottom, there's a piece that's routed out for a connection with the base. So several different tools are pulled in and used to do that work. And so you set those 16 pieces of wood up on the machine, and it does its thing for, 15 minutes. And then it says, I'm done. And you take all those 16 pieces off and put 16 new on, and away you go again.
So once you've figured out what the right thing is and how it should go together, the CNC makes it so it's very repeatable. It's very consistent. It's kind of like, I always know to drill this hole here. My husband has one. So.
It's how you can make sure that you're not getting a hole that's 2/10 of a centimeter in the wrong position. The consistency of that hole, it'll always be in the right position. And that's so critical, obviously, when you're manufacturing larger quantities of things. It needs to be repeatable. It needs to be consistent. The worst thing that could happen is somebody buys a weaving loom and then these two holes that the bolt's supposed to go through, they don't line up. And that's what's so critical about using a CNC machine to ensure those kinds of things.
Yeah. So you're not going to give me any exclusives on what's coming next, but can you tell me, I noticed that there have been a couple of pretty cool developments in some of the classic established Louët tools. Can you tell me about some of the new features you've added?
From a product development standpoint, we're trying to focus on adding more features to products for the same value, just making a tool a little bit more valuable and interesting to a customer. One example is Loom that we just introduced. We added a little rubber ring to the ends of the bars in order to prevent the warp threads from falling off the end. And it's just that little itty bitty thing. Those rubber rings it's not like they're expensive. But we do route a small groove in the end of the peg in order to hold that rubber ring. But it adds so much more functionality to the product. That's the kind of, it's an example of the kind of thing that we're looking to add. With the e-spinner, we're adding 2 reducers to the orifice. So we've got I think it's a 14 millimeter orifice, so it's rather large. We're going to add a 10 millimeter reducer and then a 7 millimeter. So the components we're using to make that don't cost us a lot, but it's the thought process to go into how can we make this a little bit more valuable. And that is another example of just adding a little something to the product. And so we're going to continue looking at those kinds of things. The rattle covers that we made for the Spring and David loom, and we're now making them available for other looms. Those are all little things that we'll add to products I think the biggest thing to take from that is it's part of our process now to say, okay, are there other features we can add without raising the price of the new product significantly, or how can we add other things? So it's a design criteria now for us, which that's a change really for Louët.
Well, and one of the things about the e-spinner is that it has both Scotch and Irish tension options. Which I think is pretty unusual.
And it's a feature that we're looking at adding to all of our spinning wheels. So then any Louët spinning wheel you buy could have that feature. So the concept of what we've done, we should be able to apply that to others. So that's something people can look for down the road. But if you do that, then again, it's just added functionality inside one wheel. Without having to spend more on a second wheel or add different accessories. It also makes our manufacturing processes simpler. So, less components, less inventory, and all of those things help us reduce costs and keep costs lower, which allow us to continue to bring products and bring products at a competitive price. So Europe is not an inexpensive place to be.
Right.
Our cost of manufacturing is high. And I've had lots of people saying, well, why didn't you go, talk to a factory in Poland or China? Or yes, there's places there are ways you can do those kinds of things, bring cost of manufacturing low. But one of the big things that reasons why Paul bought Louët was because he saw the 20 plus employees that were working there, and he wanted to continue to provide an employment opportunity for them. And we have a real tight family. The atmosphere in the group that we have, the culture is tight and nice, and so that is really a big reason why Paul bought the company and he wants to grow it to protect the future for the people that work for us. So it's all pieces that fit together really, right? And it's important for us to constantly look at ways to focus on the costs of things so that we don't price ourselves out of the market and bring things to the market in a cost-effective manner.
I think people would be shocked to hear that there's only 20 people at Louët making all of these looms and wheels.
It's 28 right now, and I'd say 3 are dedicated to the kitchen cabinet part of our business.
The kitchen and cabinet part of your business? The what?
Yes, Louët makes custom kitchens as well.
Wow, now that's diversification.
On the outside of our building, it actually says Louët, custom kitchens, and that's because it's more for the local market. And so when people are driving by, that's we get people coming by to visit the factory, but your building says kitchens, but you do spinning with. So it's a source of confusion in some regards, but. It was a thing that Paul's father, that's where the business that he came from, the industry that he came from. And so after there were some years in the 90s that were a little lean, and so they started making custom kitchens and tables to offset the low years for spinning and weaving. And that just has continued on. And it's probably about maybe 10, 15% of our business in sales volume. There's 3 dedicated people for that side of things. But it also, it's an interesting thing. Everybody knows the quality of kitchen cabinetry. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the workmanship that you have to have in order to do kitchen cabinets well. Well, those are the people that are also making our spinning and weaving equipment. So it adds to the quality of the spinning and weaving equipment.
Wow. So if I were in Europe, I could have a Louët wheel, a Louët loom, and a Louët kitchen. You
could have that in North America as well.
Really?
But, and I'm sure there's people that would love to come and install it, but the price would be pretty high.
Wow. So, and we've talked about Europe and we've talked about North America, but it's a big world. You mentioned Japan. Where else is there a Louët presence?
Indonesia, Brazil, we have a dealer. Turkey, there's a dealer in Crete.
Really?
Yeah, Israel, New Zealand, Australia, we have dealers there. Korea, trying to name them all off the top of my head.
That's okay. That's not a quiz.
But it gives you the idea. Yeah, we're spreading around the world, and I think one of the I'll give a little cat out of the bag. We're working on a ball winder.
Oh, cool!
And same lines as the diversification of kitchen cabinets. If we can diversify a little bit into yarn stores, mm-hmm. we feel there's value in just being in that industry a little bit differently mm-hmm. than we are in spinning and weaving, but also the correlation in that some yarn stores can start carrying spinning and weaving mm-hmm. equipment. So some growth potential there. So it's a crossover piece that I think will also grow our footprint around the world. Mm-hmm. Well, every store that we've gone to over the last 6-8 months, we've been asking, if we did a ball winder, would you be interested? And it's an overwhelming yes. So I think there's growth potential there, not only in our traditional markets, but outside those markets as well.
Yeah, it's surprisingly difficult to find. Of course, I have a home ball winder, but they look so simple, but they often go wrong.
They're not so simple. I can tell you that from the product development side. We're close, but the first 2 models that we made, we weren't happy with. But we are close. I think you'll see them being introduced very early 2025.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Dave. That is a lot in 50 years and a lot that you have cooking for the next 50.
Yeah. Well, I said to Paul, let's just make a 5-year plan and but have a kind of a vision for 20 mm-hmm. years, and then just tackle it, those kind of segments at a time and see where we go. I'm planning on being around for another, I think 14 or so years. So
I was going to say, you say that you're going to retire, but.
Well, yeah, 14 years will get me to 70, mm-hmm. and I think I'd like to have a plan so that I can retire at that point, but also choose to continue in some capacity. I can see myself continuing on with customer service in those later years. Got to do something.
Yeah, people are going to keep asking questions.
They're going to keep asking questions, and when you have the knowledge, it's not a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And I'm always going to have something to do.
That's right. You cook up more products, there'll be more questions.
Yeah.
More people.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Dave.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks to our sponsors for supporting the podcast. Thank you for listening to the Long Thread Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate the show and leave us a comment on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. Thanks again.